How much does being in the European Union actually cost us? Well, we can think of it in terms of gross domestic product, GDP, which is the sum total of all of the economic activity in the UK. And last year that came to £1.8 trillion, or £1,800 billion, an extraordinary amount of money. And the economy was really made up of two main elements. 60% is all about manufacturing, services, value creation activities like that. And they produce tax which helps to pay for the remaining 40%, which is our public services, health, education, welfare, pensions, the armed forces and so on. So of that total GDP, how much are we paying over to the EU every year? Well, the gross amount is about 1%. But actually we don't pay that because we get a rebate and we get grants and we get various payments back. So what we're left with paying is 1/2 of 1% of our GDP every year. A pretty small amount in comparison to our GDP, and one that we get a lot of benefits for. So we now have to think about what would happen if we left the EU. And what I haven't talked about so far is the national debt. Our national debt at the moment is about 80% of GDP. And of course, being a debt, we have to pay interest on it. And at the moment, our interest every year amounts to something like 2% of GDP. How would things change if we were to leave the EU? Well, obviously, we would get that back. But what would happen then? Well, there's a broad view that the UK would enter a recession, which means that our economy would get smaller. And some people are talking in terms of a 3% reduction in our GDP. So that leaves us with a smaller pool to pay for our public services. And we have two choices. We can either cut back on our public services even further, or we can try and keep them at the same sort of level, but increase our borrowings. And if our borrowings go up, then our interest payments go up. So the net effect would be that even though we've got that money back, we are paying more out for our borrowings, or alternatively, we are facing a cutback in our public services. If our economy shrinks, then life becomes more difficult. And there's very strong evidence that if we come out of the EU, our economy will shrink by more than what we would save from our contributions to it. And that is one of the major reasons why I think it's so important that we vote to remain in the EU on Thursday.